What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today we are reading the second part of the big ol' SupernovaRevenge story. And then afterwards, I have a special little treat for y'all for sticking through and watching the second part, because I love you. Also, check out the new channel, Daily Dose of Memes, link in the description, a booyah. Alright, the story we're picking up on is called My Mother Destroyed My Childhood and Made Me Fail Out of College and Laughed When I Was Homeless. I Destroyed Her Entire Freaking Life. Final update. Cross-post title, This Does Not Belong in Pro Revenge, This is the Real Supernova! I love long titles. In case you need a recap, go watch the last video because there are some important announcements, so no recaps for you. Okay, and without further ado, the story. Revenge. And so, I did. I called CPS on my mother and informed them of my history of abuse at her hands. I informed them of the dozens upon dozens of old photos I have of myself, all bloody and bruised up. I previously compiled as much evidence as possible in my teens, though never did anything with it until that point. That sparked a visit, which led to an emergency removal of my 3 younger siblings when they caught my mother punishing my little sister coincidentally when they happened to do a visit. My mother was also arrested, but released hours later. I reached out to the job she got years ago with a fake resume she made me write for her and made them aware of her falsehoods. Because of her field, it was promptly looked into and she was fired as well as blacklisted. She lost nearly $80,000 plus in salary. I then deleted every email in all of the email accounts I made for her because she never changed the passwords. Afterwards, I deleted the email accounts themselves. Within a few weeks, things were definitely going downhill for her. My youngest sister's dad was engaged to my mother and is now trying to file for sole custody of my little sister, who's in CPS custody. I'm sure he wasn't happy finding out what his baby daughter had in store if my mother was given free rein. She's missed her court appointments, and I know she hasn't been able to pay her mortgage since last year, as I've heard she's had to ask one of her friends for money. Her life had become a creamy, messy crap symphony, and I was the fecal-splattered conductor. It was all going to crap. She went radio silent for months and had a warrant after missing another court date. This was fall and winter of last year that she was off the grid, so I went on with my life. Early 2019, I get a random call from her and find out she went to her home country months ago, after everything went to crap. How was she allowed on a plane? I have no clue. So cue another geyser of BS spewing from my mother's mouth. She's telling me I need to tell CPS she's a good mom and that she's never abused them or me. It's unbelievable. So I cut her off and shut her up. I was a little buzzed when she had called and had always mentally prepared for this moment. I started slowly telling her in graphic detail about all the gross crap I used to do to her food because screw it. I told her how I used to piss in the picture of the Lipton iced tea she used to force me to make for her and then not allow me to have. I told her how I'd secretly sabotage her utensils with my butt cheeks before serving her food. She was quiet at first, but then began cursing me out, though it didn't bother me. I'm on a roll and I wasn't listening. Her words didn't matter to me anymore. She's blaming me for her life turning out so terribly while fully unaware of how true that statement is in terms of the situation she was currently in. She shuts up long enough for me to get one more word in before hanging up and blocking her number. I thought that was the end of it. I expected my last post to be my final update, but as I've said before, my life is a crap symphony. The official update. My aunt and I recently reconnected about 2 months ago. Prior to last month, I haven't seen her in years. We met up and had a long conversation about life and everything. And then she admitted that she talks to my mother nearly every day. She had mentioned all the things happening to my mother, but didn't know it was me who started this all. She actually felt really bad for my mother, but my aunt was always a really caring person, so I understand, I guess. I told her I was very uncomfortable with the thought of her talking about me to my mother, and asked her not to. My aunt did it anyways. After meeting up with my aunt, I learned through her that my mother was finally coming back to America. She was arriving at the airport in 1 week. The problem was, my aunt told her that I was going with her so the three of us could all talk, without telling me. I didn't know what the feeling of betrayal really felt like until my aunt told me that. To be honest, as wrong as it sounds, I'd rather my mother just think I died or something. But my aunt kept insisting that I had to give my mother another chance, and I had to learn to be open-minded. And that though she wasn't there all the times my mom did horrible crap to me, she loved us both and wanted us to get along. Like I'm supposed to just get along with someone who has tried to murder me. Like my mother has choked me awake for school. If you don't know what it's like to forcefully wake up, not being able to breathe, and seeing your own mother standing over you at 5 a.m., angrily and tightly gripping your throat, count yourself lucky. But as I said at the beginning of this post, I've already resolved myself to being a bad person. And so, I lied to one of the only people who is kind to me. And I promised my aunt I'd try to have a heart-to-heart with my mom and her and talk out the nearly 20 years of abuse. Obviously, that was not happening. When we got off the phone, I called the detectives who gave me their numbers months back in case I heard from my mother. I asked them a few leading questions about what would happen if so-and-so were discovered, and then I made my plan. I wasn't sure if my mother would make it past customs. How she was able to travel to a different country with a warrant? I don't know. But if she did make it through customs, I'd call the police in the bathroom and wait for them to arrive while I sat with my mother. Cue my mother making it past freaking customs because she's my mother. She's a horrible person, but she's good at what she does, which is being horrible. I digress. My mother calls my aunt when she's getting off the planes, and my aunt says she's going to meet her. I told my aunt I'd wait for them in the little Starbucks, and then we'd all drive somewhere else. My aunt agreed and went off. I called the detective and told him that my mother was standing a few feet away from me, and if they could meet me at our destination, we are going to. They told me that was unnecessary and that they'd have officers closer to me come and apprehend her at the airport instead. And so I waited and waited. And then I finally saw them arriving both at the same time. The 3 to 4 officers who had convened in those few passing minutes began actively searching around the food court I sat close to. My mother and my aunt walked down the gate towards me. I felt this overwhelming weight in my chest just kinda settling down. Deeper and deeper into my gut the closer they got and the more the officers searched. What if they stopped looking when my mother arrived? What if my mother somehow got away with this crap again? Countless thoughts, but I just bit them back. I've grown very talented at silencing whatever my inner turmoil of the day happened to be. But my mother and my aunt were animatedly talking as they made their way to where I was sitting. Before they had a chance to say anything, I quickly jumped up and said, "I ordered some teas, let me go see if they're ready," which was the first thing I could think of as they were sitting. But it worked, and I dashed off past the cash register to the Starbucks and to the outer part of the food court. Looking back, saying I had to go grab some tea probably wasn't the best thing to say, but I digress. I made it a few feet out the door and half jogged over to the officers who were still looking around the food court area. From where they were, they wouldn't have seen us sitting. I walked over and asked them if they had gotten a call about a woman who had a warrant or something. I mentioned that the detectives said officers in or near the airport would arrest her. They said they did, and I told them it was my mother. I told them her first name and they verified her last name. I told them she was sitting right in the Starbucks waiting for jail, and one of the cops chuckled. Seemed a bit surprised and judgy that I was pointing them right to my mom. I told them I'd go make sure she didn't leave, and they followed behind by like 10 to 15 paces. I half jogged back inside and up to the little table where they were sitting. My mother had that half scowl she always wore whenever she looked up at me when I popped up out of nowhere, and my aunt began asking me where the drinks were before I cut her off and looked dead at my mother and her scowling face, which had quickly turned into confusion when I had finished my sentence. Mom, I know we don't get along, but I wanted to let you know it's all my fault. Cue my mother starting to ask me with this kind of soft, motherly voice, "What do you mean it's your fault? Why do you think—" But of course, I cut her off because there's nothing she hates more than being cut off. And I finally have the power in this situation. Look, jerk, I want you to know exactly whose fault it is and whose piss you freaking drank when you're sitting in jail wondering why the world did you so wrong. She sputtered something and slapped the freaking crap out of me. My aunt's jaw dropped. People are watching. The cops saw it happen as well, as only a few seconds had passed from when I walked in. Into handcuffs she goes. Now she's showing her true colors, cursing and saying all kinds of things you couldn't imagine a mom saying to her kid, telling me she'd freaking kill me and so on, etc. I calmly walked behind them as long as I could until they took her to some room and held her until the detective arrived. I wasn't there that long though, as the lack of thrill of it all kind of got to me, and I went home to break a 2-month sober streak. I was there long enough for my aunt to tell me she was disappointed in me and that she doesn't know if she can forgive me for doing something so spiteful and disgusting to her sister. To be fair, I did it completely out of spite, so she isn't wrong. I've already acknowledged I'm not a good person for what I did. Come to find out, my mother was using my aunt's passport to leave and come back to the country multiple times since she left. That's why they never caught her. Now my aunt has some explaining to do, but I wish she didn't have to get caught up in all of this. She has always been kind to me and doesn't deserve it. My mother is facing up to 10 years just for using my aunt's passport alone, and a slew of other charges, including one for child endangerment. Her husband left her, her kids were taken from her. Her friends have seemingly distanced themselves from her from what I know. After 19 years of abuse, I finally get my revenge, and none of the charges have anything to do with me, which is interesting. Did it feel good? No, I felt nothing. Just the rise and fall of the situation, but nothing really concrete. I expected to feel something. Not even satisfaction or happiness, but something. Either way, the only thing for me to do is continue to work towards becoming the person I want to be. She told me constantly that I was worthless and that I'm nothing. I've told myself the same consistently as well in the past. I've decided I'm going to become one of the greatest photographers of my time, and I'm going to push myself as hard as possible to succeed so that anyone else who has ever suffered how I have now have no reason to doubt themselves or their ability to be great one day. As for me right now, I currently live in a homeless shelter. I decided to go to one 6 months ago after realizing all the drinking and inconsistency was making it hard for me to move forward. I wasn't saving money and was couch hopping from friend's house to friend's house. A few weeks ago, I got a voucher from the government, and sometime in the next 2 months, I can find a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment. I've been aggressively saving my small checks. I've been practicing and working on building better habits and just being a better photographer. I don't make much right now, and I know many people will say it's a stupid dream. But I know if I put all of my effort into making this work, I can not only be a self-sustaining photographer, but more than that. My situation is embarrassing, and it's hard, but I know I won't be here longer than another few months. It's not some dream, it's a plan. I'll also be going back to school in the fall and pursuing photography. As for my siblings, that situation is still a bit dicey. and I don't think I'll give an update about that, but they're all doing very well. As far as my mother is concerned, as horrible as she was towards me, the only part of me that even thinks about her on rare occasions hopes she isn't having a horrible time. I don't like knowing people are hurting. Edit: for everyone roasting my aunt, please stop roasting my aunt. She has always been supportive of me and what I do and my photography and has believed in me from day one. Maybe I'll take it over to r/relationships or something. I need advice, but don't plan on putting much thought into that relationship right now. Also, for everyone asking in literally all my posts, yes, my username is on purpose. His username is How About That Lipton? God. It relates to my first ever bit of revenge I was able to get on my mother. I'm sure you already know what that is, and it's peeing in her tea in case you don't remember. Also, thank you to everyone for being supportive and offering me advice about places to get therapy in my inbox, but as I've said in my prior posts, I don't think therapy will help. I don't see how talking about my feelings, or lack thereof, is going to change anything. I'd rather just post another mini autobiography on the internet if that's cool with y'all. Thanks. Lastly, thank you to all the kind humans and all your kind words of hope and encouragement. It means a lot to have you guys believe in me and see value in my photography. I don't really know how to sell prints to everyone asking, but I appreciate the love regardless. Your words help me reaffirm my belief that I can get better and be great one day. I plan on it. Hope you stick around for the journey. I don't know if the mods will murder me for putting my photography page, but it's at Larry Potter X. Y'all, first and foremost, check out his page. Let's make sure this guy achieves his goal of becoming one of the greats. Photography is a great thing to pursue, in my opinion. My older cousin, he does photography, and he takes some sick, nasty pictures. And you might not actually appreciate the value of photography, but once you start looking into all the work that goes into taking a nice picture and all the waiting and trial and error, you learn to appreciate all the little things that goes into image composition. Anyway, that was definitely some revenge. I'd imagine arranging her arrest and all that stuff would have been very cathartic for OP here, but I guess not. However, I do believe the right thing was done. This woman was a monster, and while we don't know the full story from her side, even with just this side, all the stuff she's done is enough to justify what she got. And it's not like he went above and beyond to make sure her life is hell. He just gave her what she deserved. She did horrible things to people, and she's gonna pay for that. Honestly, in my opinion, not enough. Like all the attempted murders and all that stuff. Anyway, that was a really good story, really good revenge, and I wish future success upon you. Alright guys, to counteract the dark themes of the previous story, I decided to end today's episode with a little blast of wholesomeness from r/Good People Stories. Alright, it's called The Christmas I'll Never Forget. When I was 13 years old, the recession was going on in the States. People were losing jobs and homes left and right. Unfortunately for my family, my dad lost his job, and soon after, we lost our home too. This meant moving away from the friends, neighbors, and school I had been with my whole childhood, and I was very upset. We went from an average 3-bedroom, 2-bath home to a tiny 2-bedroom apartment for 5 people. It was all my mom could afford. She had to sell my dad's car to afford the first and last month's rent, so we were also down to only one vehicle. I didn't make many new friends at the new school because I was teased for having Walmart clothes. It was a school where a lot of the kids came from money. I cried and begged every day to go back to our old house and my old school. Christmas rolled around, and before, Mom had always had us make a list of things we wanted. That year, there was no list. Mom said our groceries were our gift that year, along with anything we were in desperate need of. My younger sister needed a pair of new shoes, older sister needed a textbook for one of her classes, and I needed a new backpack, so that was our big gifts. Granted, we did get a few small things here and there from relatives, but that was about it. Cut to Christmas morning, 6 a.m. There was a pounding on our door, waking everyone up. I went to answer and yelled, "Who is it?" A female voice yelled, "It's Mrs. Claus! Open up!" Mom and Dad were just as confused as I was, but gave me the go-ahead to open the door. It was the older couple that lived upstairs. They had become friends with my mom and dad and had heard about what a hard time we were having and brought us gifts and 2 large casserole dishes of lasagna and garlic bread for dinner. These people that I barely knew bought my sisters and I all MP3 players, some new outfits, and a $100 gift card for Walmart to get us whatever else we wanted or needed. I cried. Mom cried. Dad cried. My sisters cried. We only lived there for about 2 years when my dad finally got another job and we were able to rent a house in another town. We didn't keep contact with these people after moving, but every time the holidays come up, I always think about them. Okay. Who left the onions here? Y'all, I know I pick the stories, but I don't pick the emotions. That was so wholesome and sweet. Gosh, dang it. Oh my god, bless these people, bless anyone who does that kind of thing. Don't just imagine how the kids feel, okay? Think of the freaking parents, alright? They definitely weren't happy with not being able to get their kids gifts, and then they thought that their kids would have to freaking just be happy with getting a backpack. And on Christmas morning, just when you're prepared to have to live with the fact that your kids aren't gonna get what they deserve, these people show up with food, money for groceries, or whatever the hell they wanted or needed, and gifts. That's just insane, and I want to cry, and I love these people. Alright, so let's end things with thanking you for 20,000 subscribers, and thanking you for checking out Daily Dose of Memes, link in the description, and also orange juice is better with pulp. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.